If you've gone down the EDC rabbit hole, then you can probably relate to how overwhelming it can be to try to figure out what the best EDC kit is for you to have. There are just a ton of really high quality tools out there, and many of them have equally high quality price tags to go with it. And so I'm no stranger to going down this rabbit hole and getting really excited about, what I can put into my everyday carry. And in this video, I'm going to share with you the approach that I used to arrive at the kit that really works best for me. Basing your EDC kit on the processes that you actually do is what I found to be by far the best way to approach how best to fill out your kit. And when I say processes, I guess you can think of that as sort of like jobs to be done or the jobs that you do. To me, a process is really just any repeatable activity of tasks that you find yourself needing to do on a regular basis. And so if you're, for instance, someone who's an outdoorsman, then bushcrafting processes are probably going to be your jam. So this would be like splitting wood, setting up shelters, creating fires, tying knots. Those sorts of things would be the sort of processes that really would be important to you. If you're, mainly like a remote office worker like I am, then the processes that matter most to me would be things like opening boxes, cleaning glass surfaces, peeking into dark corners, that sort of a thing. And so I think that before I really, got into thinking about what kind of tools to get, the first thing to figure out was just what were the processes that mattered most to me. Next, once you've kind of figured out what processes make the most sense, then there's also a range of different kinds of tools that you could choose from. Usually, going from cheap and sort of good enough tools to perhaps really high quality single purpose tools that, excel at the job. And when it's time for me to think through which tool to select, the thing that I like to think about are, how frequent is the process that I'm going to be using this tool for? And also how high are the stakes for that process? So for instance, if I'm someone that needs to, turn screws all the time, like maybe I work in a trade that just involves a lot of screw turning, then having a substandard screwdriver or one that's part of some multi-tool that can do the job in a pinch but isn't great, eventually that's going to start wearing on me how not great at the job this tool is because I'm doing it all the time. But if I only ever have to turn a screw once every blue moon, then just having the tool is kind of joyful, because even though maybe it's not the best screwdriver, just being able to do the job when I needed to do it is helpful. And so having a good enough tool in that situation is the way to go. And so in my personal life, I'm not a carpenter. I'm not someone who does a lot of screw turning in general. So for me, having a Phillips head, or not even a Phillips head, a flathead screwdriver as part of my Swiss Army knife, that actually works really, really well. And the handful of times I ever do have to turn screws, I've got the tool for the job and I feel really great using it, even though it takes me longer than if I had a dedicated, perfect screwdriver with a ratcheting, turning mechanism. Also, the idea of the stakes are important. And so let's say we look at something like photography. If I'm, now I'm not a professional photographer, but if I were, and let's say I shot weddings, it's really important that I capture the moments that matter, especially if I'm being paid for it. So in those situations, having a camera that can perform very, very well is probably worth paying a higher premium for, partly because your livelihood depends on it, the stakes are high, but also because those moments can't be recreated. So you need to have a tool that can give you the best shot of capturing those moments. Whereas, if I'm just someone who wants to, take the odd photo at an outing with some friends, or I'm at the beach with my family or whatever, a Polaroid is fine, because, the only people that really care about it are ourselves. myself and my friends and family. And if they're not great photos, like, it won't be a big deal. The stakes are low. No one is getting paid for this. This is really just for fun. And so frequency and stakes are how I think about the best choice of tool to get. And then lastly, I think it's okay to have items in your everyday carry that are not actually tools. And so what I mean by that is, to me, a piece of equipment is either a tool or it's a toy. And the difference between them is that a tool is something that I use to actually fulfill a process regularly. It does work. It kind of contributes to an outcome. But a toy is maybe something that I just like. It doesn't maybe do any real work at all, but it's something that maybe has some sentimental meaning, something that I just enjoy having. And, EDC is space at such a premium. I don't want to be wearing like a lot of stuff in my pockets, weighing down my pants. But there have been times that I've had, toys in the mix. So for instance, I really like the podcast 99% Invisible. They had an entire series of podcast episodes on challenge coins. It's kind of a recurring theme. I have contributed to their fundraising efforts in the past. And one time I received a challenge coin for buying one of their books as an early contributor. So that challenge coin it doesn't do any real work, but it was nice to have in my pocket, It felt nice to have. It has some sentimental value. I felt like a supporter of some great creative work that was being done. And I kept that in my pocket for a little while just because it was fun to do. Similarly, when I was first going through my journey with Alcoholics Anonymous, when I was going sober in the beginning, one of the things that many chapters do is they'll give you like a poker chip that at various stages of length of sobriety, one day sober, 1 month sober, 2 months, all the way to a year. And it's really a positive, motivating way to kind of continue that. And so for those, for that first year, I kept one of these chips on me just as a reminder of what I was doing and why it was important. That was actually a very high stakes sort of thing. But that, I would argue, is not necessarily an EDC tool. It's a bit of a toy. And from time to time, I think it's okay to just be real with yourself and say, this is the kind of thing that I just like and it deserves a place in my pocket. So putting all that together, taking stock of the processes in your life that, are really representative of who you are, maybe not what you want to be, but what you actually are, is sort of step one. Then thinking about what those processes are in terms of frequency and stakes would be the next important kind of screening factor. And then finally, just being real with yourself about whether you are drawn to a tool that perhaps is really just a toy, but that's okay too. With those criteria in place, I was then able to sort of really start thinking much more clearly about what equipment to carry in my pockets. And that will be the subject of the next video. Thanks for stopping by the channel. Please like and subscribe if you like this kind of content, and I'll see you in the next one.